Hello there, Salim Omar here. I am really excited to bring you another special guest. His name is Jonathan Zacks. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Salim.
Jonathan is on a mission to decimate no-show appointments. After running an appointment-based business for a decade, he co-founded Go Reminders, which increases business revenues and cuts wasted staff time with automated appointment reminders and online booking. Jonathan runs the growth and marketing for Go Reminders, and he loves helping small businesses with automation and communication. So, Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking time for this interview. Let's start off with, give us a little bit of a backstory, your backstory. How did you get into creating this program or whatever else that highlights your career to date?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. So I graduated college right after the dot-com bubble had burst in 2002. And throughout college, I was always expecting, I was a computer science major, but I wasn't a super hardcore engineer. And I was just sort of expecting, all right, I'll just get a job at any fancy startup or a big tech company. They're hiring basically anyone who can code, and so it'll be fine. And then it's just like steep decline right before I graduated throughout that year. And it was just clear that that was not happening. So I took the step of starting my own business, put up signs around town to help people with computers in their homes, which I was good at as a hobby, and gained a lot of skills, although not through my classes doing that. And so I built that up into a business that serviced other businesses and essentially is a technology consulting business that still runs to this day. And throughout that, my main focus was on bridging the gap between people who were not heavy technologists and technology, and finding ways to speed up their businesses, make them more efficient, automate aspects of it, and just sort of take the headaches away. I sort of described myself as I'm a headache reducer. I'm not an IT person. We're not a web development shop or a marketing agency. Like, we just reduce your headaches. Like, you need to run your business. We'll take care of these technology aspects for you. And so I was really focused on, convenience for my clients and making everything technology easy for them. And so throughout the years, I had always wanted to start some sort of software, create some sort of software product, and I dabbled with it a little myself. Nothing really took off. I did some projects with friends, and this Go Reminders was one of those tiny side projects that took off. And so, basically my friend and I were looking for problems to solve. And the problem that came to mind was no-shows, because he no-show appointments. He had a call one day saying, you missed your 1-year checkup on this medical appointment a week ago. Do you want to reschedule? And we were just like, what? This can be solved. And so we sort of, read the lean startup and did an MVP and built Go Reminders from there. And I personally knew a lot of the pain and weirdness with no-shows through running a business that had a lot of appointments with my clients at my office, online, at their offices. And so sort of close to my heart, and a problem that we felt like we could really solve.
Yeah, that's a great backstory, man.
Thanks.
So I want to, talk about no-shows and the pitfalls of it and all that. But before we go there, what are some of the lessons you've learned being in business? I mean, you had your services business for, I believe, at 10 years or so.
Yep.
And you've created a software and you're offering that to the marketplace, the Go Reminders program application. Just like high level, like 3 things you've learned being in business, or one big thing you learned in business or lesson learned.
Sure. Yeah. So one of them is just to make decisions faster. As I've sped up the cycle of making a decision, seeing how it performed, and then moving on to the next decision, that's been really great. And I've gotten stuck at the point of, okay, I made a decision. We tried a test and I viewed it as an experiment, and the data is just so inconclusive that the choice is wait, reverse it, or keep it. And it's like, if I got stuck in the waiting a lot, and until I realized, okay, not every test is going to have conclusive data. If you change the headline on our homepage, if you change your business card, if you change certain things, that, there might be no impact. It might be just as good, just as bad, no impact, even if you wait a year. And so I've shortened that period of trying to figure out whether something has an impact and basically just aimed for how can I make decisions faster? Well, it's basically make bigger decisions or decisions that, will have a bigger impact. So I can see, is it really bad? Is it really good? Or is it the same? And if it's the same, I just move on pretty quickly. So that's one lesson, just to speed up that process of decision making, because the faster that I make decisions, the better I get at making the decisions also. Another lesson is not getting stuck in analysis paralysis. And so, I'd often have this thing in my mind where I was like, well, I don't want to do this thing in my business. I don't want to do this marketing tactic, or I don't want to try this new service, or I don't want to make this new feature until we know for sure that this is the one to make. It would be days, weeks, months, many times trying to figure out whether, well, should I do this with it and should I do that? And the answer is probably in that time, I could have done both of them. And so if just doing things more without really being confident that it's the right thing to do. So I really, conceptualize that as, trying instead of doing. I used to really think that listen, I don't want to just try anything. I want to really do it. And I want to learn and make sure I know what's going to work out first. And it turns out that led me to just a lot of procrastination and research. And now I just refashion, the idea of trying in my head as trying is doing. If I'm trying something and I'm not sure it's going to work, that's actually doing something. And that is the way to go. And I don't need to know whether it's the right, because I think it was a CEO of Coinbase recently said on a podcast something about the job of a CEO is a lot of making decisions with incomplete information that in the moment that you don't know if it's right or wrong. And it's just trying your best and making those decisions. So I think those are my two main ones.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. And, it's interesting and kind of coincidental that I would have said something similar in terms of taking action. One of the lessons I learned early on is taking actions. And I think it's decision making, it's being decisive and taking a step and then moving in the direction of implementation, because there's lots of ideas. And as entrepreneurs, we're creative minded. We've got this free mind and we're thinking about different ideas and there's lots of them. But we got to kind of implement the ones we feel are going to be good. So being decisive and then taking action. So I created kind of a formula, and I call it the rule of 72. And I've been teaching it now for over 10 years. It's taking action within 72 hours, a small step. Within 72 hours, take a small step and then create that momentum. And then that one small step inspires you to take the next step, and then the next step, and the next step, and so forth. People often ask me, Salim, you've written 4 books and you run 2 businesses. How do you do that? How do you find the time? It's taking action. So somebody gave me the idea of writing a book, and I didn't write the book overnight. It was all right, let me get a table of content. Let's get an outline, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and so forth. And after a few months of that, you create a book or any project, anything that you want to do. So that was good. Thanks for sharing, the 2 things that you did in terms of lessons learned. Let's talk about, no-shows, right? You personally had experience running your own business about no-shows, and then you were, consulting with clients, and you saw you wanted to get their headaches done or eradicated. And from that, you created a program that helps no-shows. Before we talk about that, what are some pitfalls of ignoring no-shows?
Sure. So no-shows are this weird thing that when you zoom out and you talk about it and you think about it, it's clear no-shows are bad. You don't want people to not show up for a meeting. But as a business owner or a staff member at a business that has appointments, no-shows in the moment are this mix of frustration that the person didn't show up with, I got a free half hour. I have a free hour now. What else can I get done that I didn't think I would be able to get done today? Which often means probably you don't have a plan for what to do and you do something that isn't super high value. And so it's this weird mix of short-term bliss and short-term happiness for the person who just had someone not show up, but long-term pain and long-term revenue loss. And, if you have 10% no-shows, if you have 20% no-shows, I would do a lot to just get my business to grow 10% a year or
Right.
20% a year. And so, and I think a lot of people would, and a lot of businesses have way more no-shows than that. And so the ones that have way more no-shows, it's a little clearer. It's like, okay, we have a huge problem here. 50%, 60% no-shows, like that's a problem to address. But once you get down below 50%, it's this weird thing where a lot of people don't feel the pain on an ongoing basis because they're just like, well, I'm running my business. That's the cost of doing business. I pay rent. I don't want to pay rent. It's like, I don't want no-shows. They don't think that there are solutions. And so, yeah, so that's the main thing of no-shows. It's this weird feeling of relief. And it's also something that when people solve it, that is a common answer that we get from our customers about like, how do you feel now that like you're using Go Reminders and things like that? And it doesn't say like my bottom line is bigger. It doesn't say I'm saving so much time. Like they do say that, but they say, I just feel such a sense of relief. And so it's this weird thing that if in the moment you feel relief, but pain long-term, but when you solve it, it's like long-term relief.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if somebody, business got 10% no shows, and if that can be tackled, if that can be solved, then that's like a 10% growth in revenues. Could be, right.
Yeah. And we see that all the time.
What are some ways to prevent it? Even if somebody doesn't want to get your application, Go Reminders, what are some ways what can they do to reduce no-shows? Or is there anything they can do?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot that can be done. And another strange aspect of no-shows is that a lot of people focus on why people are not showing up. And there's a lot of anger and frustration of like, well, can't they just keep their stuff organized? Or they didn't care about this appointment and they don't deserve my service. Or, well, I don't know how to solve it because this person canceled because they were in a car accident. This person canceled because they slept late. This person never called me. So I don't know what the problem is. And so the thing is that to really tackle no-shows, you have to basically ignore why people are not showing up and like let the emotional aspect dissipate and focus on just like, what can I do to tackle 90% of the no-shows that are not people who are just malicious? I mean, like, listen, there might be some malicious people out there. You're not going to solve that. But most of the people are just, honest mistakes. And whether they should have their life more organized or not is not up to the business owner. Right. And so essentially reminding people in like an organized fashion, saying the right thing and like getting people reminded at the right time. Those are all things you can do. So for example, I see reminders as this way and our platform as this sort of crystal ball to see into the future who is going to no-show at the last minute. Because a lot of the last minute no-shows are people who, if you asked them 3 days before, they would have said, oh man, I forgot to put it in my calendar. I just checked my calendar and I can't make it. So there's no need to wait till the last minute for those. And so people are inevitably going to have conflicts and going to reschedule. Some people will proactively be organized and call you up and text you to say, hey, I need to reschedule, but other people won't. And so that's a lot of it is just, if you can get a reminder out to people basically the closest to the appointment that you can with allowing yourself enough time to fill that hole. So if that's 3 days, if you need 3 days to make sure you can fill a hole in your schedule 3 days from now, then like 3 days ahead, send a reminder and ask people to confirm in that reminder, because that will engage them. And the person will say, if they have to if you can just say, you can do this manually, you can do this with the system. You can just say like reply C to confirm, or reply to me to confirm that you'll be there. Like just that action of asking people to do something often triggers them to check their calendar. And if they don't respond, then you can reach out to those people who don't respond, which is going to be few and far between. And so you won't have to manually reach out to a lot of people. And that will catch a lot of the last minute no-shows ahead of time so you can fill it. And then when you get closer to the appointment, remind them to prevent the no-shows that are due to people who just forgot at the last minute. And so for those no-shows, an hour before, 2 hours before, whatever makes sense, if they have to travel to you, to remind them, but don't ask for confirmation in that one. In that message, you're just saying, hey, I'll see you, or I'll talk to you, or whatever it is, because you don't want to give them an out at an hour or two before, because you probably can't fill that slot. Right. And so So that's that. And I always say like text messages are the best. The majority of our
Mhm.
customers are using text reminders, and way more texts are going out than emails, even though our system does both email and text,
Hmm.
and it can do both email and text for the same appointment. And so the other thing I would say is don't call people to remind them through a phone call, because if you're in business, you want people to pick up the phone. And so if you call them and they're in the middle of a meeting and they pick up the phone and they think there's an emergency, or they think, oh, you must be rescheduling my appointment, so let me pick it up so I can deal with rescheduling, and it's just to remind you, that's training them to just let your call go to voicemail. So
Mhm.
the next time that you do call, when you have to actually reach them last minute, they're then trained to say, oh, it's probably a reminder, never mind. And so that's why I really discourage phone call reminders, because we want to save that phone call for when you really need to reach someone. So yeah, there's a bunch of other things with like, how many reminders to send, how to not annoy people. And we actually have a free guide on this, which I either send you the link or I'll make sure you get. And so you can put it in the show notes. It's just
Okay.
like goes through all these things in a PDF
Great.
of like when to send reminders for your business, and all the like the timing, what to say in it, make sure you communicate value. That's another aspect of like value-based reminders. If it's a sales appointment, make sure in those reminders you're communicating the value that your prospect will get out of that meeting, because they may be on the fence. And so if you can communicate that
Mm.
value anytime you're talking to them, you can say, hey, I'm looking forward to this call, here's the time, here's the Zoom link, and at the meeting we're going to go over XYZ, and by the end of the meeting this is what we're hoping to get out of it. That just reinforces why they should show up and that they don't want to reschedule.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is so good. Yes, good
Mhm.
stuff. So, I mean, doing this is labor intensive, right? I mean, writing emails and, and text. And I think there's some benefit of doing that because you can kind of customize it based on perhaps the customer, the patient, the client. But it
Mhm.
is labor intensive. Is that kind of like what Go Reminders does? Does it automate it, and does it do it at the expense of losing that customization, that personalization?
Yeah. So yes and no. So yes, it
No.
absolutely automates all that stuff. And that's what we built our functionality around, really just solving this problem of no-shows. And so it has message sequences that you can say a different thing at a different time. So that you can set it to 3 days or however many days before for that message that asks for confirmation. And you can have a different message an hour before that goes out. And so all it takes from the business for people who use our software is just creating the appointment. And then we have default settings that are set up there. I think one goes out immediately, the next one a few days before, and the next one an hour or two before the appointment. But all those settings are customizable. And so, yeah, Go Reminders basically automates all of the stuff that is in that guide and all of the practices that I talk to, which can
Mhm.
absolutely be done piecemeal. And even just doing it yourself without automation is helpful. But if you're like, you know what, I just want to automate it, Go Reminders is the tool to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so affordable. I was on your website and kind of looking at the different packages. So, I mean, any business can really, one customer lost or one patient lost you
Yeah,
is like more than pays for
exactly.
the
Yeah.
cost
And
of
so
a program for.
built, we really built the pricing to be simple and make sense, to just be, like the value provided is much greater than our cost.
Yeah, yeah. We are kind of close to finishing off. Anything else before we get into kind of what's the best way for folks to reach you? Anything else, Jonathan, you want to share? A question I should have asked that I didn't, that you want to kind of give us a quick 1 minute on?
Yeah, sure. I think, maybe just when businesses think about automating parts, there can be a bunch of emotional and mental barriers to it. Often people will think that it's going to take too much time to set up this program. It's not going to be worth it. And it may or may not be true, but often it's that fear that holds people back from trying a new platform. And so we've taken that into account. That's been a big thing that, as I mentioned earlier, I've tried to focus on convenience, ease of use throughout my entire career. And that's what we're focused on at Go Reminder is, things are set up, you can get up and running in 30 seconds. And it really, really addresses that issue of non-technical people needing a platform. And we built all sorts of things so that you don't have to think about it. So for example, when a reminder goes out, if someone replies to it, you get the message and you can respond to them within Go Reminders. So it has, even though we're not a texting platform or a text marketing platform, like we have all that. So it's for, no shows, but when people respond, like you need that two-way texting. And if you need to notify everyone that your office is closed or you have a promotion, we have text blasts and email blasts. And so we really just built the functionality is needed and wanted by people who are in our target market.
That's awesome. Jonathan, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah. So goreminders.com is our website, and we have chat on it that you can chat. It's more like not so much live. So don't expect an answer that second. But if you have any questions for me personally, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram DMs or chat us on our website. And our awesome customer support team will get you in touch with me. If you have business questions, I'm happy to give advice or feedback in any way that I can from my experiences. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. This was so insightful. Appreciate it, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Salim.
My pleasure.